It's 1 a.m. After several attempts, I've finally made it to the final boss of Dragon is Dead. I have a build I feel confident in, one that has easily carried me through even the most difficult of enemies leading up to this point. The battle starts. I land an early combo, deploying 2 fireballs and a rain of meteors, but get caught out by a swift strike that erases over half of my health bar. I recover, quickly downing a potion while looking for my next opening, but my combatant is darting around the battlefield. I land a strike here, a spell there, whittling a shot's health down to half. I'm starting to get in the flow when, suddenly, I'm dealt a staggering blow that leaves me stunned and at low health. If I can just survive this, surely I can finish the job. But, alas, a shot is too quick. I am dead. The run is lost. But, I've collected some valuable loot along the way that gives me an idea for another build. It's late, and I should sleep, but I can't resist. I go again. Here's my elevator pitch for Dragon is Dead. It's a combination of Diablo 4's loot and gameplay systems, the pixel art of Blasphemous, the roguelite action of Dead Cells, and a dash of Castlevania for good measure. It's a recipe I'm amazed someone thought to create, and I'm delighted it exists. Like a stew with too many ingredients, sometimes certain flavors overpower others in unflattering ways. Many of the systems Dragon is Dead borrows from Diablo fail to fit the game's roguelite structure, and I encountered a fair share of bugs. But, despite the rough edges, I couldn't put Dragon is Dead down. The combat was fast, frenetic, and challenging. The classes and builds were fun to experiment with. And, of course, the sweet, sweet loot generated a smooth power curve that, after each failure, always left me feeling like I could go further next time. It's that one more run sensation that makes roguelites one of my favorite genres, and Dragon is Dead delivers that in droves. At first glance, Dragon is Dead looks and feels like a standard hack and slash. You have a double jump and dash for platforming and avoiding enemy attacks, and you start with a basic sword combo. Quite quickly, however, gameplay evolves into what I can only describe as 2D Diablo. It has all of the usual dungeon crawling trappings: EXP, skill trees, loot, spells, cooldowns, potions, mana management, you name it. However, Dragon is Dead is a roguelike, not a dungeon crawler. Death means losing all your experience and skills. But what about that loot collected along the way? Well, that you get to keep, and that's the genius in Dragon is Dead's design. What developer PM Studios smartly realized is that the power curve that loot creates in dungeon crawlers can work in a roguelite too. Dragon is Dead starts quite difficult. Early runs will likely be over quickly, but along the way, you'll pick up new equipment with better stats that will allow you to go farther next time. Soon, you'll start getting legendary equipment from bosses, and these items have special, often build-defining effects like transforming how a certain ability works or augmenting a specific mechanic. Between runs, you can organize your equipment in a hub zone, which offers other services like upgrading potions and modifying the random buffs your gear provides. Eventually, you'll amass a good enough set of equipment that will allow you to reach the toughest sections of Dragon is Dead. I really enjoyed this gameplay loop. For one, the combat is great. Movement is responsive and abilities are impactful. It somehow manages to feel like a hack and slash and an action RPG at the same time, and slinging spells and slaying demons is incredibly satisfying. Experimenting with different abilities and crafting builds centered around legendary weapons and armor is quite fun, and there is substantial enemy variety to keep you on your toes. The bosses are also a treat, with crazy designs including a 3-headed tree, a spectral knight, and a hulking, cleaver-wielding abomination that felt like a proper way to cap off each area. My only complaint is that combat in the air doesn't function nearly as well as on the ground. You can't combo your basic attack, and many abilities have a windup that makes using them during a jump unnecessarily difficult. Taking out the many flying enemies was often cumbersome, and I found myself gravitating towards AoE abilities to deal with them since direct attacks felt so bad. Dragon is Dead's loot-based progression bucks several of the usual roguelike conventions, for better or worse. Usually, what I find appealing about roguelikes is the feeling that no 2 runs will be the same, that my success will hinge on my ability to roll with the punches and make critical decisions about my build. Instead, here you make that decision up front by deciding what equipment you will use going into a run. Your gear will direct you towards choosing certain skills, but those decisions are entirely in your control. Runs aren't completely void of randomness. There are artifacts that you can acquire as rewards for clearing levels or from shops in between zones. These provide stat increases and synergy effects that require multiple artifacts with the same attributes. It's a solid system, producing interesting decision points, and the synergy buffs are substantial and worth striving for. The problem is that these effects were never strong enough to nudge me towards pivoting a build. If anything, acquiring artifacts felt more like a slot machine that I simply hoped would provide me with benefits that aligned with my build. This was still fun for me though. I was constantly getting new loot that pushed each run in a new direction. One run centered on a weapon that caused my fireballs to explode. Another turned my basic attack into a chain lightning. The ever-improving stats on new loot incentivized me to try different builds. There are also 3 classes that each play very differently and are equally enjoyable. The magical Spellblade, the tanky and hard-hitting Berserker, and the nimble, dagger-wielding Revenant. Each is equipped with unique weapons and a distinct skill tree, providing additional gameplay variety. I never felt like things were getting too samey, even when my loot trivialized the first few sections of a run. However, I can see this dynamic shifting in the later difficulties, where the toughest challenges may require maxing out a particular build, rather than experimenting with new loot. Speaking of the endgame, Dragon is Dead has 15 nightmare levels to conquer once you've taken down the final boss on the starting adventure difficulty. These harder difficulties are the only way to acquire mythic gear, a rarity beyond legendary, and should provide plenty of replay value. I say should because unfortunately I was unable to try nightmare difficulty, which was incredibly disappointing since I was chomping at the bit for more. After my first successful run, I was given the option to raise the difficulty through modifiers such as more challenging bosses or lower resistances. However, when I would start a run, no matter what my selection was, it would place me on adventure difficulty. It is unclear if this was just a problem with my save file or if there is a more pervasive issue here, but I'm concerned about the state Dragon is Dead might launch in. This wasn't the only bug I ran into either. There were several missing texts, typos, as well as a few gameplay glitches, most notably one that caused me to get poisoned by my own attacks. Most of these were very minor and didn't affect my overall experience, but it still gives me some pause before I outright recommend this day one. I did appreciate the amazing pixel art, which somehow manages to convey the dark tones of the setting without ever becoming too drab or dreary. The animations are also fantastic and do an excellent job of telegraphing enemy attacks, even in the most chaotic of situations. The narrative, on the other hand, was rather unimpressive. The demonic theme story is extremely convoluted and has far too many characters. This is normally where I'd explain the basic premise of the plot, but the reality is that it didn't matter to me. The plot is cookie cutter, the writing is mediocre, and honestly, I couldn't have cared less. I was here for the gameplay, and Dragon is Dead delivered on that front. Dragon is Dead surprised me. It took the mechanics of Diablo and masterfully applied them to the action roguelike formula. The beautiful pixel art, excellent enemy designs, and the fun, frenetic combat make playing Dragon is Dead a blast. And the loot and build crafting kept me hooked, consistently drawing me in for one more run. I'm concerned about what the launch date might be, especially since bugs should have been ironed out during the early access period. I wouldn't blame anyone for wanting to wait a bit to give PM Studios time to smooth things out. However, I've seen how they've responded to feedback during that time, and I trust that they will refine Dragon is Dead into a polished experience that I will continue to come back to for a long time. Thank you for watching. I'm a partnered creator with Minimap, who's kind enough to provide me with the code for this review. Minimap is the ultimate gaming app. It allows you to track all of your games and achievements in one place thanks to its Game Sync feature that works with PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, and Steam. You can also share updates and reviews with a small but passionate and growing community. I'm a data nerd, so I love everything Minimap allows me to track, like what systems I own a game on and total hours played. And I've discovered so many great games through reading community posts and reviews. This isn't a paid advertisement, I just really like the Minimap app and community and want to see it grow. So if you are interested, check out the link in the description. And to see more of my game reviews, please subscribe. Okay, thank you, bye!